Patti Armbrister. I am an agricultural educator over in Hinsdale, 7 through 12, and then I'm starting a agrarian food web. It's a consulting business that is hopefully helping people become more regenerative in their practices. Free the Seeds ladies asked me to present on pollinator alleys today. And how many have heard of a pollinator alley? So, a few of you, okay? They have a lot of names, I found out from my research. I like to call them beetle bumps because I think that sounds really cool. Why would we plant pollinators? What's some reasons why you guys would plant pollinators? Pollinating plants, right? That you attract bees. What else? Honeybees, particularly. Oh, you don't like bumblebees?
Well, I like them all.
Oh, you like them all. Good, because we want to like those native insects and bees and stuff. What other reason?
Fruiting plants require them.
Pardon me?
Fruiting plants.
Yes, increase our production with them. What other reason? Same thing? Okay, good. Well, you're going to learn something new today because there's a lot more to these pollinator alleys than that. So, this is a short list of the benefits of them. Nutrient runoff. They're considered, now these are mostly perennial plants, and some of them I do put annuals in with them too, but most of the ones I researched were more perennial plants so that they're staying in place and then they're gonna help you in multiple ways, right? So nutrient runoff. So in Iowa, for example, there's a big project going on there, and this lady did, I think, her PhD in the pollinator alleys. They call them pollinator strips there, where that they're able to buffer that chemical runoff and nutrient runoff out of their soils. This was a soil sample we put in the water this morning, and to give you an idea of sediment that's coming through the water, this one had no-till, highly biological soil that's going to be more of the types of soils that's under these pollinator alleys, then this is more of our farm field soil. So when we have a strip of soil with these pollinating plants planted downstream of this, it's buffering these nutrients and these chemicals and whatever's in that water from going on through into the waterways. So that's the buffer. Nitrogen or nutrient runoff, and those nutrients can be multiple things, but nitrogen is highly soluble. Reduces soil erosion, increases the pollinator's habitat, and I think key in vegetable production, it's a beneficial insect habitat, right? So we think of just the bees and the pollinators, but the beneficial insects are going to be key component. We'll talk quite a bit about that. And then the mycorrhizal services. Does anybody know? You guys know about mycorrhizal? We have 50% not yet, so we're making progress. A year or two ago, it would have been, no, what in the world? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that because they're huge services. It's going to enhance the water quality. Would you like to drink this?
Yeah.
I would. I would drink this. Do you want to drink this one? Probably, I wouldn't recommend that. We're going to increase the biodiversity. We're going to increase that above the soil with the plant leaf litter and the plants, and what type of insects they encourage, and what kind of habitat they make for those insects. And then the biologicals are going to increase dramatically in diversity with those different plants and different fruit exudates coming out of those plants. It's going to reduce pollution, because this is a huge pollution problem, right? So all of that nutrient runoff is heading down to Mississippi and causing huge, huge problems. So we want to stop that from happening. Reduce pest problems. We're going to talk about that. That's tied to our beneficial insect habitat. And enhances plant communications. Did you know the plants are communicating? And the insects are communicating, right? So this really enhances that, has ties together with the mycorrhizal rising, and offers another income stream, right? So we could be selling flowers or dried flowers or whatever from those. It could be, you could have brambles in there, you could have berries, you could have all kinds of different stuff in those pollinator strips or beetle bumps to generate income from it. So this is some of the things I found them called on the internet. The prairie strips is what they call them in Iowa. The beetle bumps is what they call them in a book that I'll show you the resources in the end of it, and I think there's a slide on that. And then eco service condor. Condor, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then conservation strips, pollinator strips, your riparian buffer, and insectary strips. So you can call them really anything you would like to call them and get along. So they're mostly perennial plants, but we want them to be flowering throughout the season. So that's where this diversity comes in, so that we want to have them start early in the spring. I like start with a dandelion, for example. It's going to be really early in the spring. They are key food source for your bumblebees especially, because they're coming out of hibernation. It's the very first thing that they're going to be able to get some food and nectar from. And so those plants should not be getting destroyed, especially not before they're blooming and they can utilize them. After that, then yeah, you can mow them off or whatever and let them come back. But they need to be an insect habitat and food source until you get another plant blooming and creating pollen. This is one of the, or two of the examples. These are from the Lexicon of Sustainability. Has anybody seen that? They do this really cool artwork, and they pick out a person that's really doing something phenomenal that has to do with sustainability in agriculture. And then they take all of these pictures and then they map them together, and then they put all this messaging down there. It's really super cool. But these two, you can look these up on the web, but these two people are both are kind of founders in their area for putting these strips in. This lady too, she's in this book, Attracting Beneficial Bugs to Your Garden. That book is super good. It is a very good resource. Okay, this is some of what they look like. And so this is going to be very organic, right? And it's going to be very personalized because your place is going to look different than any other place. And so there's just endless as to what it could look like and where you're going to use it, right? This one is in the city. This one is in Iowa, right alongside of a cornfield or a soybean field. This one is stripped more where that they can actually go in there and harvest flowers. And this one is intermingled right as a row right in your growing beds. Okay, so how do they work for the beneficials? They're going to offer shelter to the beneficial insects. I'm going to use the black wasp as an example. So black wasp is, everybody familiar with them? They will lay their egg inside an aphid and kill the aphid from the inside out. And so they're super beneficial. They'll kill 200 aphids, one wasp. And they're tiny, they're littler than a mosquito. So they need tiny nectar source. So your sweet alyssum is a perfect source of food for them. But then your sweet alyssum also harbors predatory spiders and things. Because it's small, it makes a great living mulch. And so it's a plant that needs to be in every garden, but it's used for multiple things and not just, oh, that's pretty and it smells great.
Could you
Right?
say something about what you mean when you say it's a harbor for
Predatory spiders?
Yeah.
Yep, so there's spiders that are taking care of other bugs. And so we want them.
It's the desirable spiders. Got it.
Desirable
It
spiders.
sounded mean and nasty when you called them predatory.
Yeah, they're going to predatory on other insects and keep other insects in check, right? But they need low-growing, bushy plants to grow in, or to live out their life cycle in it, right? So this is going to, lots of these plants are going to tie to insects' life cycles, and they need to have a place that you're not going there and destroying partway through their life cycle, that we need to let them. These strips are kept year-round, year to year, you know, so that you're giving them their space and their place. So the food, water, shelter thing. They need different flowering plants, flowering throughout the growing season, like we said. Space and time to live out their life cycle. And diversity of plants attract to the diversity of insects. And we want all of that. We need the whole insect world to be intact. Right now it's in danger. It's collapsing throughout the world, the insects are. And we need to figure out ways that we're gonna help them keep going so that everything else can stay in balance and keep going. There's only one pest to every couple hundred, or there was only one pest to every couple hundred other insects, right? Those other insects are doing services for us that most of the time we don't even understand, right? We just need to finally give them a place. When you drive from eastern Montana and go all the way to eastern North Dakota before you get into trees and stuff, there's no prairie. The only prairie that's left is in patches where we're still doing bee production. It's all tilled. And they've tilled the fields bigger and bigger and bigger, where the bees can't even fly across them, right? So they need places desperately to be living. And we need to be providing them for them. But the benefits we're going to get out of it is way bigger than just the honeybee or the feel good I'm helping the insects. You're going to get a lot of soil health benefits out of it. So the diversity of roots are super important. This is just a plant demonstration that I did and didn't do. So all of those roots are leaking root exudates into the soil and feeding the soil food web. So the more roots you got, the better. And they're going to all be connected through Mycorrhizal rising. So it is a fungal network that's kind of like fiber optics that's is in the soil, and it is going through from one root to another root to another root, all through the soil, like a fiber optics network of masses though of it. And it is going to be able to provide you 20% of the water. It's also a communicator. How it communicates is, give you an example of giraffes in Africa. So these giraffes like a particular tree, let's call it tree A. Right, so a giraffe comes along and is foraging on top of tree A. Well, tree A is like, holy crap, I need to stop that from happening. It sends chemicals up into its canopy, turns the leaves bitter. The giraffe's like, oh, I don't like that. The giraffe heads on, goes to the next one. The chemical signal's already up. The chemical signal's already up 200 foot away before it can get to a tree that hasn't got the chemical signal yet. All from the Mycorrhizal network, connecting it and signaling, hey, don't let them do that to you. They'll signal for a drought too. They can signal for all kinds of stuff. And so you want to keep them intact, and the best way to keep them intact is to have a perennial plantings of diversity. And then they're going to run through each other. The plants are receptive to it because the plants are capitalizing from it. They're bringing them nutrients and minerals and stuff through the network. So we want to keep that intact as best as we possibly can. And so these pollinator strips or beetle bumps, if we would put them through the middle of our garden or our bigger farm fields, you know, like our production vegetables, if we put them right down through the middle of it, then we're going to be able to get 20 foot at least running out the side with the Mycorrhizal rising coming out the side. That's going to colonize all those other plants that are in your planting, that are your annual plants that you're disturbing or whatever to plant. They're going to be able to run this fiber network. If you put them 40 foot apart, you're going to be crossing over. So you're going to get the benefits of it, but you're still got 80% of your growing area is your annual plants.
So has that been established, these beetle bumps need to be 40 feet apart in order for...
That's what I would recommend. Okay. There's all kinds of ways they do it, but that's what I'd recommend. I'll show you one here too. This will give you a little bit idea of how massive it is. Where I've got the green, that's the root of the plant. Everything else is a Mycorrhizal network. And that's just giving you a small example. This is just one plant.
So does this work very similar to like how mycelium would work?
Yes, this is a mycelium.
Okay, okay.
So they're all fungal, is that right?
This is Mycorrhizal
Right.
yep.
Okay.
It's a fungal network. So some examples here in Montana. This is Doug Crabtree. He's the president of the Montana Organic Association. He's a big farmer, big production farmer. So, you know, I don't know, 1,000 acres or something. I'm not quite sure what his acreage is, but big tillage type equipment. And he put in these strips and has been able to get all of these benefits out of putting those strips in. So I think he's probably got 2 combine heads or 3 widths between them. I don't know what his measurements are, but that'll give you a good idea of how they're getting used in a bigger setting. He's got a lot of native plants intermingled, and sunflowers are a native plant to Montana, and so we do want to capitalize on those native plants as much as we possibly can. That's going to reduce your wind too. Wind's a huge problem for us in eastern Montana, so it's a consideration. These really help that. Having those little bit of buffers for wind is going to help with your pollinators too, and fight the winds back. So other examples in large production, especially in the grapeyards, grapevineries, in the blueberry and raspberry producers up in Oregon. Lots of them are adapting this practice very, very quickly, where they're just doing an intercrop. It's like a cover crop, but they got enough perennials in there that they're not having to till it up or anything. They just mow it when they want to control what's going on. But then they can control the nectar source for their bees and pollinators and stuff.
Can you tell me why you mow at night if there's bees?
Yes, they mow at night, because the bees are feeding on the flowers during the day, so they mow at night.
So the bees will be at home.
Yeah, the bees will be in there. The honeybees will, you know, and the other bees have dispersed. I don't know where they live. We need a lot more research on it, but if you're interested in insects and bees, you should look up Jonathan Lundgren on YouTube. So he's a doctor and is just phenomenal about the whole bee thing, and so you should look him up on the web.
So what are they doing to keep the ground so bare right at the base of those?
That's mulch. These ones mulch theirs. That's a mulch around the grapes, and then the cover crop.
So if you mowed during the day, would you chop up a lot of bees, or just a matter of disappointing them?
Depends on how slow you move. Here I come. You know, if you're going really fast, I think you're going to do some damage. So, but
Serious question.
by evening, a lot of bees and most pollinators and stuff have went wherever they go for the night.
Okay, so the thought is, if you mowed that down at noon, there'd still be a lot of bees coming, thinking that there were flowers there,
Yep.
but they'd be disappointed and waste their time.
Well, you're not going to get the whole thing mowed in one day, are you?
Right.
Butterflies,
Assuming you
moths,
don't
everything.
get
So
stuck.
it's just be better practice after the bees or early in the morning before they come out, you know, so that you're not,
It's a good thought.
yeah. But you want to leave some, right? These guys are in production ag, and so they're mowing them. But most of these pollinator strips are not mowing unless you're trying to control weeds. So when in your establishing year or two, you may need to mow them to control some weeds, depending on the plant and what you're trying to do. So this is how the diversity of the roots matter. This is a great poster, by the way. That's turf grass on the far side, right? So your Kentucky bluegrass. I really don't think we should be having turf grass in our lawns. We should be having blue grama grass and white Dutch clover and low-growing native plants that we are not having to water or fertilize and reduce lots of this chemical necessity that we've created. And it's going to really cut down on your water dramatically. So I think blue grama is on this example. But it's a bunch grass, right? And it's got deep root system, probably like the one in the middle. I don't think this pointer, for some reason, that works on this side. We had a plant like this with really a lot of fibrous roots under it. This was the rice grass example. So to give you an idea, I think that's ironwood, how much deeper the root systems could go in some of these plants. And that's what we want. So it improves water quality. So that soil is doing a lot of water cleansing. Right now, a lot of our agricultural soils is really broken and it is not getting cleaned properly because the water cycle is not functioning quite right. And so until we can get those fixed, then we're not going to be able to get this clear water going down the riverways. We're going to get that cloudy example. Build the soil biology reduxidates, sequestering carbon in your mycorrhizal refuge. So refuge means that if we go in there, if we decide, well, okay, we have to disturb and we got to chill to put in whatever the crop is, right, we're going to destroy the fungal network. But it will recolonize from the sides, just like I gave you the example of going out 20 foot out into the field. And so you're going to want to encourage that and try not to destroy it too much. Switchgrass is starting to be a popular plant that they are looking into for bioenergy, but it's surprising how many pollinators and stuff go to grasses. And I'm not even sure why they do, but they do. So the more of them, the types of different ones you can plant, the better off you will be. So this one's in Oregon. And I haven't researched this farm that well, but there's a blueberry farm in Oregon that used to be the largest commercial chemical blueberry producer. Now he is the largest regenerative agricultural producer. I think it's Sunset. And he's got videos on the web too on regenerative agriculture and how they're doing it with their blueberries and stuff. But they are all starting to put these flowering plants in their alleyways. Okay, this is excellent research by Dr. Eric Bennon in USDA over in California. This is a huge valley in California where they're growing lots of lettuces. And this is his organic farm. And he did this big research on sweet alyssum as to how much of it we need to have so that we've got the nectar source. He's working with hoverflies. Hoverflies take care of lots of aphids too. Hoverflies are the fly that looks like a bee. So we think it's a bee, but it's a hoverfly. And so we really want them in our growing areas. So he was able to do several years of research and figure out if he had 8% sweet alyssum, and this is all romaine lettuce, so it's a monocrop. But if you had 8% sweet alyssum in there, then he wouldn't have any aphid problems. So they've been able to stay organic and not have to use any pesticide, even organic pesticide, because of the sweet alyssum planting intermingled with it. So he just does a double planting strip every
10,
spot that he needs, yes.
every 10 rows.
Yep, every 10 rows. And then you'll see, I got another picture here, but he's got a hedgerow that goes all the way around that's perennial bushes and flowering plants. And so that's how wide theirs is. But they're doing this whole organic field without having to use any insecticides of any kind. So he's creating the house and the place and the food for all of those beneficial insects to take care of all of that organic land. He's got a lot of perennial shrubs, but those could be ones that you're harvesting. Right here, we could be having blueberries in there and harvesting blueberries in those plantings. Pretty cool, huh? And once they get them established, they're not having to water them, right? They're perennial and they're native. And so the work we're having to do for them after we get it established is hardly anything. We have to do some pruning on his shrubs, but these are the beneficial wildlife that he says is the best ones that he is harboring, which includes our hawks and gopher snakes, or I think we call them bull snakes. But they will go in and I would take care of our moles and voles and gopher problems by having them in place. But they need a place to be able to get away from people and lawnmowers and stuff, you know. So this little bit of wild area is actually very, very good. This is the hoverfly up on the other side there. We have a lot of them in our school garden, and the kids think they're bees, but they gotta look close and identify that, oh, that's a fly. So they're just trying to mimic a bee so that other stuff leaves them alone. But they're eating a lot of aphids. A lot of them are utilizing cover crops wherever they're not in production with their soils. You know, so if They would normally have a fallow year where they're selling whatever, they're gonna put a cover crop in instead. And I would encourage you to let the cover crop go all the way to flower and then terminate it, if you're gonna terminate it. Or let winter terminate it and then let it become the leaf litter mulch for the next year. But it's feeding your soil the whole time, right? And it can be feeding your,
That looks like a mix. Is that a mix?
That is a mix, yeah.
Peas and
Yep.
something. Winter
yes,
wheat.
and you want to plant mixes.
Okay.
Preferably 8 species or more. And Dr. Christine Jones's research has kind of proven that if we can get over 8 species in the mix, then we get something they call synergy. And every plant in the mix is better together than apart. So every plant performs better in the mix than if you planted it in a single planting. And just incredible. And so it's like this example that we had on the pull-up, is that all of those different roots are doing different root exudates. Each plant sending different signals, and you're getting different biology working for it and coming and feeding the plant. So that's where our bionutrients are going to come from to get back into our foods, is these deep-rooted plants and get the biology working for us, and them mining it and getting that plant healthier and getting those vitamins and minerals and nutrients back in that plant for them, us, or the animal to eat and then us eat it, or us eat the plant itself, right? That's a missing link right now with the monocultures and the chemical farming that's been taking place, is that we're just missing that, right? So we've got to get it back from the soil food web. These are some plants that Dr. Ben in California highly recommends. I grow all of those for the same reasons. Our buckwheat I'll plant anytime I need a fast cover. It's going to be blooming in 45 to 50 days. But it will also set seed in about 62 days to 65. So as soon as it's done flowering and the bees are off of it, then you need to terminate it. Unless you're going to be wanting seed going on your ground and it becoming in the environment and growing on its own. So it's very quick to seed. Pollinators just love it though, and all kinds of different bugs are coming to it. And so it's fantastic. Anything in the dill type family, in your carrots, I'll let carrots go to seed too. So all those umbrella type seeds are taking care of beneficial insects that couldn't get nectar from, say, a nasturtium or a bigger flower. Phalangia the same way, or coriander. So here's a beetle bank. These guys are out of Oregon State University, and this is a PDF I included in the slideshow, so if you want it, and Free Seed's going to have it, you can download it. So this teaches you how they recommend putting them in. I think I would probably put it in with the no-till drill, but there's all kinds of ways that you could do it. I think I would actually grow a lot of those grasses in your forbs and stuff and transplant them rather than from seed. But some plants that I like to include, definitely branching sunflowers, especially in a garden setting or organic farmer setting. I use them on the windward side of the beds, so it's going to protect my beds from the west and also shade some of that west sun. So I put a pretty dense, heavy planting of branching sunflowers, like the branching ones, because as we cut those flowers off, then we're going to get more of them. So it's got cut and come flowers, so the more we cut, the more we're going to get. And so I don't plant a single head sunflower, so I plant these guys. Their seeds are lots tinier, but you're going to have lots and lots of pollinators. So you need a pollinator for every little seed on those sunflowers. So they'll bring in pollinators that you've never seen before. And 90% of them, I don't know who they are or what they do, but they're all good. And so they're just like a beacon. I use them on the outside of my school garden to draw in the pollinators from the whole community. And so they come for them sunflowers, but once they get there, they're like, oh wow, there's some buckwheat, there's some phacelia, there's all this different stuff, and then they stay. And if I have to show my kids a pollinator issue, I have to go to somebody else's garden to show them one. We have 0 pollination issues in the school gardens. So Facilia, I actually brought some seed to the fair here, so hopefully some of you picked it up. Super fantastic plant.
Tall?
It'll get knee high if it's in good soil and got good microbes working. About knee
Like
high.
6 foot tall plant.
If you let it self-seed, it's gonna be too close together, it's gonna need thinned out to get that bushy. But it will bloom twice a year, and you could actually harvest seed off of it probably twice a year.
How high
So-
did you say it was?
About knee high is maximum amount.
What species are you working with here?
What's that?
What species are you working with?
Of the
Facilia?
Facilia? That I don't know for sure. Got the seed source from Johnny Seeds Organic
Okay.
Supply.
Gotcha.
So, and it's the one that cover crop guys are using throughout the
So
United
that's
States and Canada.
probably Costata then.
Yeah, you would know more than I would, so, cool.
I didn't know, because there's so many different ones.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't know.
good to know, but I'm using the one that Johnny Seeds started.
Gotcha.
And I think that most of the cover crop guys are, I mean, when I go to their fields and stuff, that's what it looks like. But I know it will be a buzz of insects and pollinators. Love the Rocky Mountain bee plant. Native, right, so love to get it going in the bees love that too, obviously. And of course, these two are rock stars. Rubber rabbit bush is fantastic. It's a perennial native shrub, and it blooms relatively late, and it'll have full seed way close, I don't know, maybe November, it'll be pretty late, right? But you could harvest quite a bit of seed off of it. So a lot of these native forbs and stuff I think are really, could be lucrative, right? You find out a lot of them are very expensive, so you could be growing seed and marketing it. Your bee bombs, that whole family, they just love. They're fantastic, multiple uses for herbs and all kinds of things. Bird's foot trefoil, it's a nitrogen fixing plant that I think is really good. We have trouble growing it there because we're not as wet as you are, but I think here, I've seen it on organic farms here and their walkways and stuff, here and all the way down into Bozeman and stuff, that I think is super good.
Is that not a, I always thought that was a weed.
Lots of people think it's a weed. But lots of people think white Dutch clover in your lawn is a weed, and it's a rock star in your lawn. This could tolerate being in your lawn too once you got it established and you didn't mow it continuously.
Brad's pretty good.
Yep, but it's feeding nitrogen, it's doing good things. And so sometimes we just gotta step back and figure out the difference between what we think is a weed, and if we can live with it and it's got another benefit, then I classify it not as a weed anymore. So, a little bit of opening our minds a little bit about some of these plants. Sandpoint's another nitrogen fixing plant. They're growing it like crazy in Lewistown for hay. So it's a hay crop that you could supplement instead of alfalfa.
Oh, yeah.
So they're growing it and replace the alfalfa. Some of our lands have had too much alfalfa grown on them, or that we just keep taking every year, and we're breaking the law of return, that some of our soils under those alfalfa fields are in horrible shape. So let's think a little bit differently, get some other plants. Bees just love it. It's just gorgeous, and it produces a lot of seed. It will sell seed. So in these situations where we're putting in a beetle bump, we want them to self-seed and take care of themselves and build their own community, right? We may plant 8 or 10 or 12 or 14 different plants, and we may get 6 or 7 that are dominating the planting. As long as they're flowering throughout the season, then it's okay. They're going to kind of adjust to our environment. Yellow coneflower and purple coneflower, both of them native. And don't forget the bunch grasses. In our example over here, where you looked at their root system, you're like, yes, we want some of them in our plantings, definitely. The blue grama is the one that I would recommend for lawns, and ours, it only gets about this tall because we've got some compacted soils and we're not getting a lot of moisture there. So we got places we don't even have to mow it. But if you mowed it once or twice a year, that'd be all you'd have to mow. It's versus our hybrid grasses that we're a slave to.
How is it to just top seed these over an additional, an existing lawn?
An existing lawn's gonna outcompete them for the water at the soil surface, because the existing grasses are really short grass and short roots, and they're gonna take up the moisture away from these guys when these guys are trying to get established. So I plant these guys and then I transplant them as plugs to really get them going. But your lawn grass, his roots are about that deep, right? Where these bunch grasses, roots are gonna be 5, 6, some of them 8 foot deep. But we gotta give them time to get established.
So the early moist season isn't enough for them to get.
Well, I tried to follow Mother Nature when she put grass seed down. With fall. So if we plant it in the fall, but you're gonna need to get that Kentucky bluegrass or whatever your lawn grass is. I solarize it, I'll put a tarp or cardboard over the top of it, get it killed out through the winter, right? Put it on the fall and the winter, then in the spring, then I could transplant these plants into it. So you guys got a great resource here in the valley where they got the native plant center, so yes.
How about these deep-rooted plants' interaction with orchard trees?
With your orchard trees,
Yes.
I would probably do them as a beetle bump on the outside and then go with more your smaller, or not smaller, but not as aggressive root system, maybe for your alleys, you know, and your walkways between your trees. But they're using them in several orchards. Most orchards are moving that way quickly instead of having to come follow that ground or till it. And they're moving back toward planting it and flowering plants. So whatever's going to work for your environment. Right? Mine's way different because we got only 12 inches of rainfall, 12 and 14 inches of rainfall, where you guys got a lot more than we do. Blue bunch wheatgrass, anybody know anything about that grass?
We live on the west side here.
And it's your state grass. Oh, I also know this. We should learn this in 7th grade. State grass.
There you go.
Okay, and then basin ryegrass, oh my gosh, in a wet spot, that thing is gonna get this tall and be this big. You're gonna think, wow, it's an imported grass or some kind, but
It'll
it's
compete with
huge.
reed canary,
Maybe,
if you could tarp it and then.
possibly.
Do these all need full sun?
Most grasses like sun.
towards the
So-
prairie.
I have a situation where a neighbor cleared right up to the boundary line,
Mm.
and then said, please plant trees so that we have a visual buffer. He took all the trees down on his side.
Well, that was his fault.
I know, but this is the way people do. I'm wondering, since there's going to be a lot of light coming in from his side of the boundary line,
Mhm.
it's east and south facing, if I couldn't plant some of these grasses that would get.
Yeah, and basin ryegrass is a bunch grass. That means it's gonna stay in a bunch and it's not gonna travel with enormous root system, right? Yes.
I've never seen blue gum over here. Has it never been given a chance, or does it have problems on the west side?
Well, I'm thinking with your tree landscape, right, I'm thinking we're pretty high fungal in our soils because of the trees. We understand the successions. We go from bare soil to the weeds to the grasses, then to our blueberries or our brambles, and then to deciduous trees, and then to pine forest. So you're way high fungal compared to our grasses. Our grasses are back here closer to 1-to-1 bacteria to fungi ratio. And this soil, I haven't looked at it under the microscope, but I'd anticipate it to be way higher in fungal than that. So that would need to be adjusted if our target is to grow our grasses and that stay in that place, right? And not let it move toward trees. Because it naturally, I think if we left, what would it grow? Trees. If I left in eastern Montana, it would grow grass, along with these native forbs. They'd all come back if we left. And then we would have to graze more like the bison did though. You know, they'd only take 1/3, and they're always on the move. They couldn't afford to stop. Right? They're gonna get 8 if they stopped. So they're taking the top third of the plants off. They didn't get to pick and choose, oh man, I love this blue bunch wheatgrass. They've loved it so much it's almost gone in the state. Our cows have, because they get the choice. Because we're in a big pasture, we're out there for 90 days. They're gonna go be selective and pick out exactly what they want. So exactly what they want has gotten overgrazed and everything else got undergrazed in the situation that we got right now, until we can change our grazing rotations differently. But those bison would only be taken, and antelope, deer, they're only taking the top part of it, the very best of everything, right, that they could get. Then they're punching in a third of it and the other third standing. That's how our soils evolved, that's how our prairies evolved, and that's how our grass, and that's how we stay in that 1-to-1 ratio. And we don't get enough moisture to move to the tree succession like you guys have. So I didn't answer your question. I don't know if it's here. Maybe in a prairie setting, right, that's stayed that way for quite a while. What native grasses do come up in your meadows?
Fescue, blue bunch.
Good?
Jim grass.
It's on the mountainside.
Nice. Those are great grasses. So I would guess that
Idaho.
probably,
Idaho blue bunch.
yeah, good. I would guess that blue ground probably would grow here. I'd grow it as a plug and transplant it into a clean bed. Try it that way. Okay, or if it's a lawn situation, right, you'd have a clean bed and we're going to plant it, right? Plant it, that is our target grass, and we're going to water it as needed to get it established, along with your clovers and stuff. Go with it. Okay, so how big should the beetle bump be? So they're going to all be different, just like you and I are different. My garden's different than your garden. So if it's a garden setting, then I'm going to put them in a bunch of 3 to 5 plants together and have multiple of them all around my landscape. All right, out of flower size, we're going to want 1 plant in the middle or along the edges of the fields. So you want a row for every 10 to 20 acres, like the beetle bump row.
And
If
those
it's-
rows are 10 feet wide?
I would say so, 10, 12 foot, depending on your drill. If you're using a 12-foot drill, then it's 12 foot. Unless you're planting your hedgerow, then that's going to be up to you. But back to our scenario with the sweet alyssum and the monocrop, though, so it's going to be 8% of the field. So if I'm an organic farmer, I don't have control of the hedgerow because I'm going to farm from fence to fence. I'm going to want 8% of sweet alyssum, but I would be putting other flowers in there along with it, not just the monocrop. But sweet alyssum's really good because it's going to bloom early and bloom all through the season. But I would give them a selection. Do you guys like eating just one food every day?
Oh boy, dog food again.
Every day of the year. So think diversity. The more diversity, the better. Especially for our soils and the insects. I have a PDF in here. This is another example of how to start them. So you could start your seeds inside and transplant in spring, or plant by direct seeding in the fall. So if I did the direct seeding in the fall, I guess I would probably do it in August or early September, and then water it, right? Get it established. But nature throws the grass seed on top of the soil and lets it come up in the spring. So kind of think about how you're going to do it. Here's some other suggestions, and they're going to be kind of up to you guys, but all of these are our nitrogen fixing plants. So yeah, ideally, I would like to see, if it was a cover crop, maybe 20% or even up to 30-40% of a nitrogen fixing plant, especially if we haven't got our soil health quite in place yet. We want to be encouraging them. So these are good examples of them. These slides are going to be shared with you guys through Free the Seed, or you can take a picture of the slides. All of the different clovers are good. They're blooming at different times, and a lot of them have different sizes and all kinds of good stuff. Crimson clover, you guys seen it? It's just gorgeous. It could be a stellar plant all by itself, and just like, yeah, just.
I don't know how to tell crimson and red clover apart. I don't know which one I have.
Crimson is got a long bloom, and your red clover is the big round, real, what I call real because we hate it when we were kids, but it's a huge bloom, and it's predominantly pink to purple color with huge leaves. So your crimson clover doesn't look anything like it at all. So if you look them up on the web, you'd see the difference of them. But they're going to attract different insects because of the size of those flowers. So these are just some more suggestions that I would be conscious of when I put in an annual cover crop, that I do get in some C4 plants so that they're doing photosynthesis differently than our C3s. So your sunflowers, your sorghum sudan, your millet, like to have them in the mix. For cool season, I really like your winter triticale. So it does a phenomenal job of building soil structure. Don't forget the buckwheat, it's gonna go to seed. So I plant it every single year, but I am conscious of what it's doing. So you may wanna mow it down with your flail mower if you're gonna plant it, but it's something like if we need, let's say we harvested in September, early September, and we just took out the beets or whatever, and now we have open soil for the winter, plant buckwheat. You got 45 days before you're gonna have big killing frost, then you got the whole, that whole 45 days you're feeding the soil food web with the root
It
exudates.
dies on its own.
And it'll die on its own before it goes to flower, to seed. So think about ways, if I got 45 days, I'd plant it, right? Even if a few of them come up, they're helping feed that biology. Phacelia is actually very cool tolerant, I got it spelled wrong there, but very cool tolerant and plant it, if I got a bed that I just let it do its thing, comes up super early in the spring. And in the greenhouse right now, I have a greenhouse with a heated floor from hot water. And back in January when it was warm, not February, but in January, it was already emerging and growing and doing well. And a plant that was in a planter that we had moved in from the fall into the greenhouse was getting ready to bloom. And so very cold tolerant. More examples.
That's so pretty.
Yeah, and those are California poppies, a state flower. Here's some more. I love the one with the intercropping insectary strip habitat. That's crimson clover. So this plant right here, that's crimson.
That is, oh, yeah.
Yeah, isn't that gorgeous?
And that's a perennial, see, it's not a biennial.
Most clovers are biennials.
Will that choke out thistle?
They're using red clover on organic farms and sweet clover and alfalfa to choke out thistle, right? So your Canadian thistle needs lots of competition, and you need to get organic matter built back up in the soil and get your microbes in the soil and deal with compaction. If you can do those things with other plants and it having a fight with them, then that's a good thing to kind of keep them down. Mob grazing's working fairly well. They're getting a lot of tall clovers in there and stuff, and then mob grazing. But that's starting to help with those, both bindweed and Canadian thistle. But that mob grazing's getting a lot of organic matter, manure, pea, plant material worked into the ground, right? So that's why it's working, it's speeding things up dramatically. Just some more, they call them so many different things on the internet, I thought I'd just throw a bunch of them out here so you could look at them and look them up yourself. But this is the conservation biocontrol concept. So they have enough flowering plants that they're going to have so many predatorial insects taking care of the pest insect that pest insect's not going to be involved in the game very much at all. Is there any questions on how we're going here? This is another native plant, dotted gay feather. I sure plant it. Bees love it. Seems to flower for a long period of time. This is where the example from Iowa, everybody been to Iowa? We've got rolling hills, right? So we have some of the soil is running off, and so they're putting these in as buffers to be able to buffer it and establish a buffer zone that's going to clean the water like that and stop any of those chemicals from running off and getting into the waterways. So they're using them as buffer zones. And this is just an example of how good it can work.
So
And
are
that's what
those
just-
chemicals going into the plant that's going into the beneficial insects?
On theirs,
Yeah.
it's, you'll have to ask Dr. Jonathan Lundgren that question. That he does thorough research on insects. He's was a USDA researcher, and he's failed ship on the USDA, and now he's got Blue Dasher Farm, and he's doing regenerative agricultural research into what the farmers need to know.